when you have high hamstring tendinopathy, it can be tricky to figure out what exercise and activities you can still do without actually making your pain worse. So in this video, I'll share the activities that our patients find works best for them, also how you can adapt them if they do aggravate your pain, and then I'll also explain to you how you can adapt or test any activity to see if it's actually beneficial for you or whether you should perhaps leave it for later. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maryke. I'm one of the physiotherapists from sportsinjuryphysio.com, where you can get online physiotherapy assessment as well as treatment of any type of sports injury, all done via video call. Now, if you're thinking that sounds a bit weird, should a physio not be touching you to assess or treat you? Have a look at the description of this video. I've put a link to our website there, and we explain why video call assessments and treatments work so well for the types of injuries we treat. The first thing to understand and remember is that there really isn't any activity that's 100% taboo for high hamstring tendinopathy. Every person is different, and everybody's tendons will react differently to different activities. What really aggravates yours may not bother the next person's. So it's always good to test things and not just cut them out because you believe they're bad for you. Now, that said, the activities that tend to be more aggravating are ones that compress and push on the tendon. So what happens with the high hamstring tendon is, remember, it's attached to your sit bone. As you bend forward or you lift your leg up in front of you, you pull your hamstring muscles tight, and they pull the tendon tight over the sit bone. And that can then compress the tendon and also pull it even tighter along there. And that can really irritate the tendon when it's already injured. These things are not a problem for healthy, uninjured tendons. It's only when they're injured that it can cause trouble. So any activity, the more you bend your leg forwards or your body forwards, and the harder you then contract the muscle in that position, the more likely it is to aggravate it. So it's often best, if you have a tendon that's very sensitive, to choose cardio activities that doesn't use a lot of hip flexion. But if there is something that you really want to test and see if it works, I always advise patients to do it in 3 steps. And this method I find works best to avoid major flare-ups, because you will know by now, likely if you've had this for a long time, how depressing it can be when everything's been going well and then you just overdo something and suddenly it feels like you're back to square one because your pain's flared up. If you do this method, if something is going to irritate your tendon, it will only be a little bit more uncomfortable and it should calm down within a few days. So it allows you to test things without actually really putting your pain into overdrive. So the first thing you do is, whatever you test, you do a very short and simple session first. So you do no more than 10 minutes usually, and you do it at a really light intensity. So if you're doing cycling, for instance, really low gears or easy gears, and really short period of time. You check how you feel while you're doing the activity. It's absolutely normal, especially if you've had your pain for a long time, to be more aware of that area while you're doing something. And the research shows that it's absolutely fine to feel discomfort while you're exercising, as long as it doesn't go into really pain. So they talk about higher than a 3 out of 10 is usually not that great. But 3 out of 10 is what does that really mean? So I tend to tell my patients that you need to watch out for more than a niggle. So if you think, I'm a little bit aware of it, I'm a little bit worried about it, but it's not really what I would class as pain or really uncomfortable, or it's in line with what I can feel in my day-to-day things, then that's likely okay. If you start thinking, I'm a lot more uncomfortable now and it's starting to feel like something I can start classing as pain, then you likely need to stop that activity at that point. But like I say, if you just feel a little bit of discomfort, you can pretty much ignore that. But then the third step is you have to check how it reacts in the 24 hours after that. So sometimes, quite often, tendons have a delayed pain response. So you don't feel the pain in the moment, you only feel it hours later or sometimes the next day. So again, the research shows that it's absolutely fine to be more aware of your injury in the 24 hours afterwards and have a slight increase in your pain above your normal levels. But if it's significantly more uncomfortable and that discomfort lasts for more than 24 hours and takes a day or two to calm down, then likely that activity isn't great at the moment. So you've got to either adapt it, and if you can't adapt it that it doesn't do that, then you have to leave it for later on. And it's not because it's necessarily making your injury worse. It's often just that it's actually irritating the pain system. And the problem is, the more you irritate the pain system, the more sensitive it gets. So then it starts creating pain more often for things that it shouldn't even create, and it just spirals everything worse. So although it's not worsening your injury, it's making it worse in a sense because you're painful worse, and that feels to you as if your injury is getting worse. So it's really worth keeping your pain levels at a low level while you exercise. I'm not going to talk about how you can run in this video because I've made a whole video and written a whole article about how to adapt running for high hamstring tendinopathy and really test what you can do and can't do. So if you're interested in running, go have a look at the description of this video. I'll put links to that there. The first cardio option I want to talk about is walking. Now, walking, I know, is not very exciting for most people who like high intensity exercise, but it's actually a brilliant way to start decreasing your pain and building your tolerance to it. And you have to be able to walk at a brisk pace before you can run eventually. If you have a really irritated tendon, you can still walk. You're just going to have to adapt how and when you walk. The best way then is to walk at a leisurely pace. So you're not actually even thinking that I'm walking for exercise and trying to go fast. You're just walking at a pace that you feel comfortable with. You're sticking to flat ground to start with, because if you're going up hills, you've got to bend your hip more and you've got to really push with the hamstrings to get up the hill, and that can sometimes irritate it. If you do have to go up a hill, you just slow down and you give shorter steps. If you're going to stride up a hill, you're again increasing how much the hamstrings have to stretch while they work, and that can irritate the tendon. Now, I know this type of walking doesn't feel like a cardio workout, but it's an important first step. If you're currently stuck in the house and you think, I can't do anything, getting out and walking will help reduce your pain, and it will get you over that mental thing of I can't do anything, because you can actually then build up to long walks even. And it's a good segue to build your walking endurance that can then speed up and make it a cardio workout. If your tendon's not that sensitive, you can start speeding up your walking, but I wouldn't go from easy walk to immediately as fast as I can. I would gradually build my speed with that. And you can start adding in hills and inclines. So if you're on the treadmill, you can do part of your walk as an incline walk and part of it as a flat walk. Now, again, when you start introducing hills or inclines, you don't want to walk up them as fast as you can, because the incline is already harder work, and the faster you walk up it, the harder the hamstring tendons have to work, so the more likely to irritate. So again, you've got to build that up just like you would do your strength training. So you start at a certain pace and over weeks you build it up slowly. And it's a brilliant way to build hamstring strength. And I've used it for some patients where they couldn't do exercises because it just irritated them, but they could walk, and they could walk up hills later. And that really helped restore the tendon strength. And the nice thing is, obviously, when you can start incorporating incline walking and faster walking, that's when you start getting a good cardio workout. I would still watch out for really giving large strides when you do fast walking. I would go for a higher cadence, so you're giving shorter steps but more of them to get your faster pace, because you are more likely to irritate it the further in front of you put your foot. So there are lots of things you can play with, but I find everybody can walk for exercise. It's just the level that changes. If you're somebody who likes to feel as if they've had a really good workout, the elliptical trainer is likely going to be the thing for you. Especially for runners and cyclists, it can be a good alternative. And what I like about the elliptical is that it limits your step length, so you automatically give shorter strides, and it isn't as hard impact, and you can be really granular with the resistance you use. So it's very easy to test an easy session and then ramp it up for different periods in that session. So same thing, you're testing your easy session. If that is absolutely fine, I would not necessarily immediately go into half an hour of a hard session. I would say, okay, we're going to do, I tested 10 minutes, so we don't want to jump too high up because it may be that 20 minutes is too much. So 15 minutes in the next session, but 15 minutes, maybe you can do 5 minutes on a slightly higher intensity than the easy. So think about not increasing time in a big jump as well as resistance in the same jump, so that you just think about the total load that hamstring has to deal with. But yes, elliptical trainers, sometimes people call it a cross trainer, brilliant option for high hamstring tendinopathy. Swimming is another brilliant option because it's so versatile. There's so many different ways you can adapt it. Usually freestyle or backstroke is better tolerated because you're kicking with straight legs, so it's less likely to irritate it. The froggy leg action of breaststroke can be a little bit problematic. However, if you can only swim breaststroke and you really want to keep doing it, just don't go into that wild action or really push with your legs as far as you can. Do a little bit of a mediocre movement there. I think the reason why it's irritating the tendon is just that as you take the legs around in that action, it's probably rubbing against stuff like the sit bone in that area and it's irritating it. A good adaptation for any style of swimming, if kicking irritates it, is that you put a floating device between your thighs. So it can either be a pool noodle, but you get those nice ones that the swimmers have that you can just get off Amazon, that you just squeeze between your thighs, and then you can swim without using your legs. So then you can do breaststroke, you can do freestyle, whatever you like. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put a link to them on Amazon in the description of this video. Have a look. Also, don't just blame the kicking action if your pain gets worse when you swim. It's sometimes if you're kicking off the wall, that can actually be really aggravating. That can be the thing. So make sure that you test what happens if you kick in a session, but you just don't kick off the wall. Does that make any difference? And again, with the swimming, you don't have to have it all or nothing. You can test if you can do part of the session while kicking, but part of it using the pool buoy. So you give it kind of relative rest, but still get a good workout because you've got to use your arms. So play with it. There's no recipe to this. You can mix and match as it works for your tendon and your fitness. The stair climbing machine can be problematic, the Stairmaster. Usually I find it really doesn't work for people in the early stages of rehab, because when you do stairs, you've got to lift your leg high up in front of you, and then as you push through, you're really using the hamstring tendons. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't do stairs in daily life. You have to do them because it's important for the hamstring to do that movement. And I don't find doing normal flights of stairs usually aggravated that much. It's just if you're going to do it for exercise where you repeat that movement and with high resistance usually over and over for 10 minutes, that can really irritate it. So I would rather leave it for later in the rehab period. And you can perhaps even use it to build strength later in rehab. It just depends on your case. But I would check with your physio before I introduce it so that you understand when the best timing may be for you. Cycling is unfortunately also a problematic movement for the high hamstring tendons. And it's for two reasons. One, the saddle usually presses directly on the injured area, which can be really, really aggravating and not useful. And two, you're in that bent over position. And even if you're not fully bent over, you usually lean forwards a bit and your legs come up quite high. So you've got that stretch action with working the hamstring in that stretched position. So it's a bit sad for cyclists because there isn't really an exercise that can work that well to replace cycling specifically. However, you can if you use the recumbent bike. That can sometimes be useful because then you're sitting on a flat surface. Usually, some of them have got saddle-shaped seats, but most of them have flat surfaces. And you can lean back slightly so that you don't have that greater angle in the hip. So often people who can't sit on a regular bike find that they can do recumbent cycling. Obviously, just put it in a very light gear again. You could also just try on your own bicycle to be more upright or get a padded saddle. But to be honest, the padded saddles sounds like a good idea, but I don't really find they are that useful because they actually make the saddle wider, which then presses more on the area. And even if it feels okay for 2 minutes, then it usually starts hurting again. So I would say with cycling, if you feel any discomfort while you're doing it, especially from just sitting on the bike, it's likely not going to be an option for you. And the same goes for the rowing machine, unfortunately. When you go into that forwards position and your legs are right up here, that high hamstring tendon is really wrapped around the sit bone. And if you then push back, it contracts the hamstring, so it really pulls it tight over there. So in most cases, I find the rowing machine is just not an option until you're really far along with your rehab. And sometimes you've got to wait until you're fully recovered before you can actually start introducing it. Brilliant. Hope you found that useful. If you've got any questions, just ask them in the comments. And if you need more help with your injury, you're welcome to consult the team via video call. The link to the website is in the description of this video. Take care.